may I request Dr. Varsha Gupta to kindly begin the proceedings. And ladies and gentlemen, please, I would request you to kindly clap for Dr. Varsha Gupta, who despite having a major operation on her leg, she had multiple fractures, and she's still here with us to sort of, take her responsibility on.
Thank you so much, Vijay sir. I am a very good morning to all. I am thankful to International Institute of Jammu and Kashmir Studies and Analysis for providing me this opportunity. One thing I want to say that I'm not the professor, I'm just a scholar of history. So as per today's topic, history, as we all know, is always the perception of the historian who writes it. That is the reason when we don't go to the sources of the facts, we end up knowing historical facts from the perception of the historian who writes them. That the history of J&K is no exception to this rule. And what is commonly perceived as the historical legacy of the J&K is actually the perspective of the colonial and the post-colonial writers. So today, my lecture is an endeavor to unveil the facts along with sources, and in fact, with no attempt to give it my own colored vision. So in this context, I have focused upon two important aspects. Number one, there is a general impression that DOGRAS betrayed the Lahore Darbar. Contrary to that belief, I have analyzed the contributions and sacrifices which Gulab Singh and his family made for the expansion of Lahore Darbar. And number second is the biased narratives of the colonial writers. Colonial writings are replete with the depiction of Gulab Singh and his successor Maharaja Ranjit Singh as tyrant, oppressive, and ineffectual administrators. So coming to my first point, that is the relation between the Sikhs and the Gulab Singh. When we go through the writings of the Sikh historians, we generally find Gulab Singh is often accused of his treachery, betrayal of the Lahore Darbar at the end of First Anglo-Sikh War. Sikh historians have portrayed him as a traitor who backstabbed the Sikhs, and further Jammu Rajas are often blamed of possessing shrewd political acumen. And it has been generally laid down that through their shrewdness and cunningness, they won over Maharaja Ranjit Singh and acquired much wealth and influence in the Lahore Darbar. In fact, even one of the historians have compared Gulab Singh with a fox and has accused him of being faithful to no one except himself. However, a study of newly declassified sources reveal that these accusations are far from reality. On the contrary, when we go through these sources reveal the contributions and the sacrifices which Gulab Singh and his family made for the Lahore Darbar. In fact, it was Gulab Singh who made valuable contribution in the expansion of the Lahore Darbar. Gulab Singh and his family, they played a sheer anchor's role in almost all the campaigns of Lahore Darbar. And we all know that almost all of the major campaigns of the Lahore Darbar, like the campaign of Kashmir, then Ladakh, Padar, Janskar, Muzaffarabad, Baltistan, Gilgit, in all these were carried out by Maharaja Gulab Singh. And the Rajas of Jammu, they not only added new territories to the Lahore Darbar, but as a tributary vassals of the Sikhs, they contributed annually to the state's revenue a sum of 59,70,000 rupees, an amount equivalent to 1/6 of the entire revenue of the state. So in a way, we can say that the Jammu Rajas, they gave more than what they received from Maharaja Ranjit Singh. And therefore we can say Jammu Rajas, they rose into prominence in Lahore Darbar by virtue of their potential and skill. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who was a good judge of human character and skills, was in fact impressed by their leadership qualities and military prowess. By virtue of these qualities, they became Ranjit Singh's favorite and became a power to be reckoned with throughout the Sikh kingdom. So those who condemn Gulab Singh and doubt his skills, in a way, give an adverse opinion of Maharaja Ranjit Singh itself. In fact, they doubt Maharaja Ranjit Singh's judgment. Then, because of his support to the British in the fight against the Sikhs, Gulab Singh is often accused of betraying the Sikhs. Here, also many things need to be clarified. Loyalty and disloyalty, as interpreted by various scholars, is contextual and is laced with personal emotions and biases. If we look independently at all the incidents, we see Gulab Singh as a man with a very strong character, who, despite opposition within the Darbar, as we know that he had to face a lot of opposition in the Darbar, he always stood by his words, by his duty as mandated by his position, even at the cost of being unpopular. And the very fact is that the Sikhs, they themselves were responsible for their downfall. After the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, we find that there was nobody who could carry on his legacy. His successors, they lacked his foresight and bravery. There was factionalism in the Lahore Darbar. The institution of the Khalsa, which was the prime defender of the state, it ran wild and brought about its own collapse. And in fact, we find that Lahore Darbar was plagued by turmoil. There was a state of anarchy, chaos, mistrust, and intrigues. And there is a long list of those who lost their lives, who were assassinated, like there was Prince Nonihal Singh, Bibi Chand Kaur, Sher Singh, Gulab Singh ke apne bhai, Raja Dhyan Singh, Raja Suchet Singh, his son Udham Singh, and his nephew Hira Singh. So under those circumstances, the fall of the Lahore Darbar was inevitable. So then we find the accusation of treason is further contradicted by the fact that despite losing his kith and kin in the intrigues of the Lahore Darbar, Gulab Singh always extended his support to the Sikhs on several occasions. Just for example, he came for the aid of Rani Jinda when she was defeated by British in 1846. In fact, Gulab Singh, he acted as a negotiator between the Sikhs and the British. And rather, we can say the larger responsibility for the defeat of the Sikhs, or in fact for the overall debacle, it must rest with the Sikh chiefs, Lal Singh and Tej Singh, who deliberately deserted the battlefields and betrayed their own troops by contacting the British. In fact, while on the other hand, we find that when Gulab Singh, he supported the Sikhs, he was even coaxed by the British about his personal loss. Yet he showed his character by honoring the commitment that his position demanded as a negotiator representing the Lahore Darbar. And in fact, by the Treaty of Lahore that was signed between the British and the Maharaja Gulab Singh of Punjab in March 1846, he saved the Lahore Darbar from British occupation for a period of 3 years. So we can say that as a king, he was a man of exceptional character who always honored the commitments that were made by him in his official capacity. Through the same lens, if we look at the Treaty of Amritsar, no, please. Through the same lens, if we look at the Treaty of Amritsar and his stand to support the British and Gulab Singh's stand to support the British, which he was committed as per the treaty, it is wrong to accuse him of the treason towards the Sikhs. So my next point is the biased narratives by the colonial writers. When we go through the writings of these colonial writers, we find that in their writings, they are extremely critical of Maharaja Gulab Singh and his successor, Maharaja Ranjit Singh. In fact, there is a false propaganda in their writings against the Dogra Maharajas of Jammu and Kashmir through concocted impressions of ill treatment to the Europeans who visited this region, as well as the oppression and the suppression of the common man, which warranted interference by the British despite having signed the treaty. Again, this false propaganda was primarily because of the British strategic interest in this region. In fact, we can say everything that happened in the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir between 1846 to 1947 was in some way a product of this strategic policy. Because if we look at the map of the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, we find that it had a border with the Tibet, then with Chinese province of Xinjiang, and with Afghanistan, and it came very close indeed to Soviet Union. In fact, it was only separated from it by a narrow Wakhan tract of Afghan territory and a small section of Xinjiang in Takdumbash Pamir. So, giving it an outlet to the world outside the confines of the old British Empire. And not only this, two major trade routes, they also pass through this region. On the east, there is Ladakh route that approach to the Hotan, then Yarkand and Kashgar in Sinkian by the way of the Karakoram Pass. And on the west is the Gilgit route, a line of communication from Gilgit on a tributary to the Indus through Hunza to Kashgar over to Mintaka, Khunzab, and other passes of the western Karakoram range. So both these can be approached from Kashmir, which not only controls the easiest access to Leh, but also until 1947, Srinagar was a logical starting place whence to set out overland for Gilgit. So these highlights the commercial and strategic importance of this region. And as early as in 1820, William Moorcraft, who was a British veterinary doctor, he underlined the importance and significance of this region from the strategic as well as the commercial point of view. And he even warned the British about the Russian interest in this region. And not only this, when he visited this region, he even noticed the presence of the Chinese officials as visitors in Leh. So he was convinced that British occupation of this region would eventually open up the markets of Central Asia to the manufacturers and preempt the Russians, who he believed to have the similar aim. He even negotiated a commercial treaty with the ruler of Ladakh. In fact, in this reasoning of Moorcraft, we see the classic motive of earlier British imperialism. That is the expansion of trade combined with the political motives that in subsequent years dominated the imperial strategy under the sardonic epithet, what we call the Great Game. So, over a period of time, post signing the Treaty of Amritsar, the British began to have a second thought about it. The reason being, number one, soon the coast of Russia, for which the Moorcraft had rung well, but was at that time conveniently ignored by the British, turned into reality. Then, number second, the strategic as well as the commercial importance of this region, especially of Ladakh and Gilgit, to control the trade routes and to gain entry into the Central Asian markets, hit the British. And now, this is very important, now they were able to appreciate as to why Gulab Singh made so much efforts to gain control over this region. Consequently, Governor General Lord Hardinge had to face severe criticism for having transferred Jammu and Kashmir to Gulab Singh. This criticism came from his countrymen both in India and abroad. It was now realized by them how Kashmir and subsequently the regions of Ladakh and Gilgit could have been utilized as a British colony. And thereafter, the British, they began to devise the ways and plans to legitimately gain access to this region. They started a false propaganda against the Maharajas of Jammu, and they portrayed them as oppressive and tyrant and emphasized the interference by British despite having signed the treaty. So it was obvious that the objective behind this false propaganda was to create grounds which would justify British non-adherence to the terms of the treaty in a legitimate manner. Consequently, official British exploration of Gulab Singh's dominions began immediately after the Treaty of Amritsar in 1846, when the Government of India deputed a boundary commission to work out exactly where the limits of the new state were. For the first time during their course of explorations, they discovered the Gilgit route. Soon these explorations made them to realize that the Treaty of Amritsar made them entirely dependent upon the rulers of the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir for guarding their interest. Therefore, it became mandatory for them to have control over this part of country. So consequently, in 1846, Lord Hardinge, on the pretext of misgovernance, and ill treatment meted out to the Europeans, wrote to the Maharaja, complaining about unhappiness and annoyance among the British over his internal administration and claiming the right on the part of the company to interfere in the affairs of his dominions. Of course, the objective of this communication was to get a resident appointed at Srinagar, for which there was no provision in the treaty. However, Maharaja, he strongly opposed and reminded the British of the promise as per treaty not to interfere in the matters of the state. And then we find this matter was again raised in 1851. This time also Maharaja strongly resisted. Then we find in 1860s and 1870s, Russia's occupation of Muslim sultanates of Kokand, Bukhara and Khiva, including the cities of Tashkent and Samarkand, increased the anxiety of the British. Because as we all know, all these conquests brought Russia's frontier closer within a few miles of India. And the result was that the northwest frontiers of India had become for the British the most sensitive of all the frontiers of this vast empire. Vast empire. So we find that the anxiety of British was further fueled by Maharaja Ranveer Singh's policy towards this region. Because Maharaja Ranveer Singh not only consolidated his position in Ladakh, but he further extended his territories up to Baltistan and Gilgit, as well as the regions of the Hunza and Nagar, which were made feudatory by him. And then further we find that when in 1861, Manchu domination of Chinese Turkestan collapsed and resulted in confusion and turmoil, Maharaja Ranveer Singh, he took the opportunity of this situation, and he saw an opportunity, in fact, to extend his commercial and diplomatic influence in the existing situation. So we find in 1864, what he did, he dispatched a small garrison across the Karakoram Pass to Shaidula on the caravan route, which was on the caravan route from Leh to Kashgar, and he established a military post there. Of course, his objective was to insulate the commercial interests of the state. And then we find he also communicated with the Amir of Hotan. And behind this project, Maharaja had some important motives. Number one was to expand commerce with the Eastern Turkestan, then to protect his dominions from any type of the incursions from the marauders, then to ensure the proper tax collection on the trade route, of course, to benefit his territory. And one interesting fact is that he about this whole project, Maharaja not even informed the British. कंसल्ट करना तो दूर की बात थी, बट महाराजा ने ब्रिटिश को अपने इस पूरे प्रोसेस के बारे में इन्फॉर्म तक नहीं किया. And British जो थे, of course, they were not greatly annoyed, but they also found it difficult to digest. Then further, we find it was extremely galling for the British to realize that technically Maharaja jo tha, he had not violated the Treaty of Amritsar. Since jo Treaty of Amritsar thi, it only barred the Maharajas of J&K from expanding to the west of the Indus. But Maharaja in reality only expanded towards the north of the Indus, about which the treaty was silent. And above all, Ranveer Singh's trade relations with Central Asian countries favorably projected the political image of Jammu and Kashmir as a considerable part in this region. These were therefore considered as a grave danger to the British interest. And in fact, T.D. Fawcett, who was the commissioner Jalandhar Division at that time, he had gone to the extent of saying that, and I will quote him, Kashmir had gone so far as to render the line of their northern boundary and part very faint. And Maharaja had acquired a position not only of equal but even superior, I unquote. Now he pressed the need for the appointment of British agents in Leh to keep a check upon the events beyond the borders of Central Asia. To press his point, Fawcett laid down many false accusations on Maharaja Ranveer Singh, sorry, and so we find that it was in this backdrop, Maharaja Ranveer Singh was forced to sign a commercial treaty with the British. And under this treaty, the officers of the government of India were appointed to survey the trade routes in the territory of the Maharaja. And we find that the effects of the treaty were various and numerous, but the fact remained that Maharaja Ranveer Singh lost much of the political influence and stature, as well as the Central Asian trade. And because we find that his place was now taken by the government of India, and when Forsyth entered into a trade agreement with the Amir of Yarkand and Kashgar on February 1874, which secured concessions for the export of the British goods in Central Asia, Jammu Kashmir was entirely ousted from the Central Asian markets. It was a great loss to uh, uh, the ruler, in fact, to Jammu Kashmir. And with this treaty, we find that British effectively usurped all the political and commercial power in Central Asia, including Western China and Tibet. But uh, we find that at the same time, the prestige and the influence of the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir in this region suffered greatly. So, in today's lecture, I in fact made an endeavor to correct the wrongs related to the history of the Dogra rulers of TNK. In fact, that many would prefer not to think about, or some have even worked vigorously to cover up. Thank you so much.